Uh, go with the flow with this. Go with the flow with this. Go with the flow with this.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Pineapple Grenade by Robin. Tonight, you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and join us for our second Realizing You video. I hope that you enjoy. Before we get started, let's go ahead and hit those subscribe buttons and also those bells for your notifications that our new videos are up. Tonight, we have the beautiful Alicia Young, who is the owner of APY Blog, along with her new business that is extending her brand called APY Beauty. She is a strong influencer, and I admire her so much. I've been following her for about a year and a few months, and she is going to bring forth what it's like to run all of these businesses, be a wife, a mom, and also what brought her to this point in realizing herself. Alicia, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very, very honored, and I'm glad to be talking with you.
Yay, we're so excited to have you, and finally we can talk more and more. I just wanted to get started with first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a 35-year-old Black woman. I'm a blogger. I'm a blogger. I recently came out of corporate America, I guess you could say. Wow, it's probably been going on 2 years now, due to dealing with chronic illness.
Mhm.
And so I pivoted from that 9 to 5 into blogging full time because I've been blogging for well over 10 years. And then starting my own business about 2 years ago. And I'm also juggling being a mom and a wife on top of everything. So it's been quite the ride the last 2 years.
Can you tell us a little bit about the area that you're representing right now? And then also a little bit about your experience and how the APY blog has expanded for you, and
Okay.
just some touch points about what it is that we can expect from the content that you put out every day.
Sure. So I was born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut. When I was 18, I moved to Philly and I lived there for 10 years. And during that 10-year time frame, I did get married and had some kids. And, I already had a child when I moved to Philly. And life kind of took me on a fast-paced ride. And then in 2014, my husband and I and our children moved to Georgia. So we're in Lithonia, Georgia. And we've been here, this year makes 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't even believe that. And during this last 7 years, in the last 4, going on 5, we gave birth to our last and youngest child, and that was a complete and utter surprise.
Yay.
Yeah, AP Young blog. So like I mentioned at the outset, I've been blogging well over 13 years. I started on MySpace, which I'm showing my age here.
Yes, 90s baby here.
And it kind of was like this space where I could get my thoughts out. I've always been a writer. I'm a poet. I've written music. I've always excelled at writing. It was my major when I went to Educational Center of Arts in Connecticut. And I've always found joy in therapy. And so on MySpace, I kind of started there with just random thoughts and poetry. Then I was introduced to like Blogspot and what was the other one? Tumblr. But, as I got older and I started to mature and my experiences were shifting, my thoughts and ideas were shifting, and I eventually landed on WordPress. And what started out as being kind of like a mommy blog, I decided to have a separate blog for fashion. And then I had a whole separate blog to discuss my mental health. And then I realized, like, why do I have all of these separate blogs for things that are really all a part of me? I'm multifaceted. I should be able to have one space where I can share all of my thoughts and experiences.
Right.
And that's how AP Young Blog was born. So I said, all right, I'm going to buy my domain name. I'm going to get set up and we're going to make this happen. And honestly, a lot of people had a lot to say about my decision to kind of like combine everything into one blog because
What they have to say?
well, in the blogging arena, right, people always tell you, find your niche, find what you're good at and make that your focal point. But what I found was I could not limit myself because I've lived a long life for 35 and
yes,
experience. And I'm like, I cannot whittle myself down to just one thing. So I ignored all the advice and I just decided I'm going to make this a space where you get the full representation of me. And that will come from any aspect, whether it's being a mother, whether it's being a mental health advocate. During the last 4 to 5 years, I got diagnosed with some chronic illnesses. So I took people on that journey with me, coming from the perspective of being a wife and what that's like, being married and being with my husband for almost 15 years and married for almost 12 now. We've done a lot of growing, and even the birthing of our last child, that came in the face of being told we were never having any more children due to my health. And then came the fashion side of things. At my largest size in my life, I decided like fashion is for everybody, including, and I wanted to talk about that too. And I really wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to be transparent. So when I got on Instagram, I had a very small following and I was perfectly fine with that. Like I was still learning how to navigate blogging with social media. That wasn't always a thing. When I was blogging on Tumblr and WordPress in the beginning, I was very anonymous. People didn't know who I was. They didn't have any snapshot of me. They just had my words. So to mesh Instagram and my blog together was a little nerve-wracking for me because then it was like, oh, now people are going to be able to put a face with the words.
And it sounds like you're kind of a behind-the-scenes person, kind of low-key. So culture shock.
Honestly, because here's the thing. When I was in Philly, I actually managed music artists. I had a very small indie little company where I was helping artists who were local kind of get on, and I was really good at navigating other people's social media and but I was never putting myself like out there as the forefront. And I think during that process of me like managing artists, they were all male artists, all ego, all like they were like my children. That's how my brothers. Like I was so used to babysitting them, their feelings, their egos, always making sure like they're on the front page, that I kind of adapted that spirit of being behind the scenes. And even to go further than that, growing up in a plus size body, you are not usually seen as the main character, right? You're the sidekick. You are, the second thought. You are the comic relief. You are the mammy. You are the nurturer, but you're never at the forefront.
Never good enough.
Right.
For first rate. Yeah.
Right. There you go. So I was just kind of like coming into this space where I began to blog and I was putting myself out there on Front Street. It was nerve-wracking and it was really hard for me to. So going into spaces, like I started going to like events, right? So like Curry Fashionista was like my first foray into the blogging arena. Like I did not know that there was like this whole culture of plus size bloggers and events and things like that. I had no clue. I had friends who were familiar with it. And so, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to get meet other women like me. And then it totally ended up being something very different experience for me. And it was those experiences that kind of shaped me to decide I don't want to be like them. I want to be like me. Because unfortunately, it was very catty, very where a lot of people pretend to be positive and for the people online. They were not that way in person. And the only thing I kept thinking to myself is, as a newcomer, I felt so blindsided by all of that. I snapped back pretty quickly. But then my second thought was, I want other people coming into these spaces to know that doesn't always have to be like that. And while a lot of our influencers and bloggers that we've come to know and love and really admire the work that they do, I felt like there was this people just wanted to show you like this perfect life that they were living. Like, here's the product. I'm traveling.
No
life is
blemish.
good. Life is
Yes.
great. I Photoshop my waist and, things like that. And I wanted to be the antithesis to that. Like, no, I'm going to give you very real, very basic Alicia.
I'm realer than
not
that.
traveling all crazy. I'm not showing up at hotel lobbies to take pictures inside of hotels I'm not staying in. If I take a picture in the hotels because I'm there and I'm staying there.
Yes.
I didn't want to front. And the thing about it was, I think it's unhealthy if you're coming out as this person who's like, oh, I'm body positive and I'm this, that, and the third, and you only show the good parts, the snapshots, you are not showing people the work that really has to go into learning how to love yourself, learning how to deal with health changes, learning how to deal with, emotional changes, things that we are all experiencing and going through. So with that, like, I decided to be very open about all of it, whether I was having a good day, a bad day, a day where I loved myself, or a day where I was struggling with my weight gain, a day where, I was struggling with symptoms from thyroid disease and going through the surgery and then getting diagnosed with arthritis. I wanted people to see, like, it's not all me smiling with my kids and my family. You know what I mean? All the time. It's not just me getting to put on cute clothes and tell you guys, hey, you can do it too. It's so much work and there's so much more to it. And I wanted it to just be a platform where I could be transparent, even if it meant that I was going to be unpopular with a lot of people.
Yes.
But I have to be comfortable with me at the end of the day. So that's how I run AP Blog. That's kind of what got me to this space. That's kind of what got me to the APY blog aspect of Instagram and Facebook and things like that. And I've been running this blog. I just passed my 5-year mark in November.
Congratulations.
So, 5 years in, I'm feeling pretty good. And whereas in the beginning, I kind of felt maybe uncertain of like where this was going, I have a much more clear vision of what my platform is, what I'm doing, and where I'd like to see it go.
Well, one thing, viewers, that I can say that I truly admire, and the reason why I targeted Miss Alicia Young, is that she is very transparent, open. She has a variance of content that she puts out weekly, and sometimes she comes back to the forefront on a daily basis. So for your viewers, since we have a few moments, can we take a step back and talk about the process of who was close to you at the time that you made the decision to leap into this platform that is focused on all different aspects of your life versus just fashion and beauty, and also take us to a point where we can understand what your core values are that would help everyone understand how you determine things today while you're working.
Sure. So hands down, my husband was probably the closest to me. And, I've been with my husband since I was 20, right? Like, we met when I was like 19 when I was 20. Like, so he is literally my best friend, aside from my best friend she was my best friend since high school. She likes to lovingly refer to herself as 1A and hubby as 1B. That's like a little inside joke. But he, first and foremost, was by my side. He had always supported me writing in any aspect of things. Like, he, the one thing I love about him most and I appreciate about him most is if I had an idea, he would just be like, go for it. This is you, you got this. Like, even when I could not see myself following through, or maybe I didn't think I could do it, he was always the one that was like, you got this. There's no reason. I'll never forget, like, before I decided to start including fashion in my blog, because I didn't really think that fashion blogging was a thing for fat women. One day my husband sends me a page on Facebook. He's like, oh, I think you might like her. And it turned out to be Chastity Gardner of Garner Style. She was my first introduction into, plus size fashion. And I was so amazed. Here's this woman. Like, she has our bodies with different shapes, but she wears the same size clothes as me. She wears 28, I wear 28. Like, okay, like, and then through her and just scanning the comment section and reading, I got put onto the Curvy Fashionista and Marie Dene. And so he's the one who kind of like triggered this idea. And he's like, you like clothes, like go for it. Like, why not?
Why not? Yes.
And in my mind, I'm like, he's not a why kind of person. He's a why not kind of person when it comes to me. So when I started to share my ideas, he was just in support of whatever I needed. What do you need to get started? Like, is it funding? Is it, just pep talk? Do you need a sounding board? Even things he probably had no interest in, he was still willing to sit there and gas me up, basically. Be realistic at the same time, but just kind of be like, you've got this, you can do this.
I'm a heartthrob, right? And he's totally starting to the backbone. You hear me?
Yeah. He saw something in me, and he's always been that way, though, that I could not see in myself. Even in the very beginning of our relationship, where I was kind of like still coming into my place as a woman who was a single mom. And I had, I was a high school dropout after I got pregnant, and then I went back to school. I went to Job Corps to get my GED and get my CNA license, and then kind of figure out what I was doing with my life after that, because I didn't know. But throughout that,
so glad you found writing.
Yes, I always used writing. Right. He was always there for anything I was trying to do. If I had a problem, he was there trying to help me find a solution. So even with like me telling him I wanted to go to my first blogging event, because I had heard that going to blogging events were good for networking, right? It's how you find brand partnerships. It's how you collaborate with other people. I didn't know what to expect. I applied for a media pass for the Curvy Fashionista Style Expo.
Okay.
I was not expecting to get it, because at that time my following on Instagram was really small and my blog was not known in that way. And so, I'm in panic mode, and my husband's just like, calm down, we got this. Like, all right. So when it came through that I was approved, he's like, all right, now what do we need? And I'm like, I need new clothes. I had never done makeup in my life.
And look at her now, Jesus.
I had never, and I'm like, okay, I need makeup and I need stuff. And he's like, yeah, I believe in you, babe. First of all, I was horrible with makeup when I first started, but he was just
weren't we all?
He's just like, you got it. Yeah, this looks good. No, he was lying, but I love him anyway. He was just like cheering me on. So he definitely is one of the main people that was there as AP Young blog was developing and what my platform was becoming. I went to him and asked him, like, how do you feel about me being open about my journey with mental health and my hospitalization at some point, and even the strain that it put on our marriage, and what it's been like? We have a child with special needs. How do you feel about me talking about that publicly? Because when you're married, it's not just yourself that you represent. Exactly. It is also your husband and your children. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to do something that was going to make him feel uncomfortable, because if you thought I was a behind the scenes person, he literally would be happy as a pig in dirt if he never had to be seen on camera. So when he was like, this is your story, I want you to tell it the way you feel comfortable. He's just supported that. He's even contributed to my blog. We wrote an article together right around the 7 or 8 year mark of our marriage, where we talked about the things we'd learned in marriage. We actually did it again last year at the 11-year mark. We kind of came back with a follow-up to what we had learned in 7 years. Like, he participates in every way possible. He has gone to every event that I've ever attended to be with me, like, just because he knows I need the support. He's like, even though it's 99% women in the room, he will show up, he will be there. He'll just be like, hey, I got you. As I was navigating with having to use a mobility aid, and I was kind of trying to figure out how to introduce that to my audience, how to talk about that. I think that was one of the hardest parts of my life, having to accept limitation, right? And saying, I can't do things the way that I used to do them. He was right there with the support and saying, what do we need to do to get you to a space where you are comfortable? So I really, really do thank him for a lot of the encouragement he's given me to be able to share so openly. I think if he did not encourage me to be as transparent in our relationship, that I don't know that I could have translated that well into my blog space. People sometimes can diminish how relationships and support really do empower you, like in a way that allows you to take up space unapologetically.
Mm-hmm.
He is a driving force for me to be able to take up space unapologetically, because he's never asked me to be sorry for who I was or the things that I've experienced, and has always championed me to keep going and keep talking. And right alongside him was my best friend of 20 years now. Same way, she's still in Connecticut, but she always talks to me. And as she saw the blog growing and developing, she had been there during the Tumblr and MySpace days. So she also was kind of like, you got this, girl, you can do this. Like, what do you need? A sounding board. She was there with the advice. If I had, thoughts in my head in the middle of the day, like I need to run this past somebody, hubby's at work, I could call my best friend. She was a really great support in helping me realize myself and my full potential to do this. And before I knew it, a year of my blog had passed, and then 2 years of my blog had passed. Like I said, now we just passed 5 years. And honestly, those are probably the two people I would say who helped me realize myself in terms of that blog coming to fruition, is those two, my husband and my best friend.
Well, I always think that championing in your life, it does mean that you have people who are surrounding you with support and always embracing you. And I'm so thankful that those two people who have been critical parts of your life are still just as critical today.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're trying to project on Pineapple Grenade by Robin, with it being a platform for women, but also just sharing stories that may be relatable. We want to touch on regularly the power of living in color. And what that means is just seizing every moment and in realizing that whatever you possess, whether it be a characteristic or even the clothes that you wear, whether they're cheap or more expensive, that you are worth the trouble. So with living in color, how do you feel like dealing with a chronic illness really projects in your work and the presence that you have? Does any experience that you have project that you were at one time restricted? Or did somebody make you feel restricted, and how did you overcome that?
Oh yeah. So it's kind of like, I call myself the trifecta, right? Because I'm fat, black, and handicapped.
They all there.
Like, I'm hitting all the marks here.
Yes.
If I said I was non-binary, I'd probably hit all of the marks. Like, at the end of the day, growing up, I grew up in the 90s, right? I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s. And from the time I could remember, the standard of beauty, whether in white culture or black culture, never included anybody who looked like me at all. Okay. They were always felt, shapely women, curvy in all the right places, yada, yada. I think the only thing I had going for me at that time was like my hair was curly, and people gave me a pass for that, right? You have good hair, and I'll get into that another time. But growing up, I never saw myself as being represented in media. With my friends, I learned to be like the boisterous one, the funny one, because it's almost like this crutch that you kind of like, it's innate. You just learn to be that when you are a fat girl, when you're a fat teenager, fat dog. So I never saw myself as having potential to do anything but other than be the side player, right? So when I kind of got to a point when I was probably in my early 20s where I started coming to my own, especially when I was living in Philly, I was away from my family. Like, I kind of started smelling myself, right? I started to kind of get out of that, like, oh, you can't be the censor, or you can't be the person in the forefront. And I started performing poetry publicly, which is something I would have never thought to do. But even during that time, there were still people in my circle who didn't belong there. So there was a male figure in my life, we'll just call him that, who, because he had a failed appearance at a venue, when it was my turn and it was successful, instead of applauding that, it was I can't believe you did that after I had a trash performance, basically. Like, how dare you go into this space, in this venue, after I told you I think that they sabotaged me. Side note, they didn't sabotage him. He just sucked.
So throwing you with guilt was his way of
Yes, he was guilting me. And throughout, he actually remained in my life for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he always found a way of trying to break me down. Like, you need to lose weight, or you're a little bit too ratchet, like you're a little too loud, you need to calm down, tone your personality down. Like, he was constantly always telling me the things about me that needed to change. Never mind the fact that I wrote the hooks on mostly all of his songs on his project. His first show was a success because I was there. Even in that moment, he had an album release party. I was singing. I was there performing with him. And the vibe was good. The show went really great. And we were just all happy because the show went really great. After the show, some of the young ladies walked up to me like, oh, could you sign my CD? And I'm like, sure, I'll sign your CD. He threw a tantrum fit. Because how dare you sign a CD when it's my show? How dare you perform and be a distraction away from me? Like, it was just like, I thought I was just there to help bring your project to life, right? And instead you're finding ways to diminish my life. So for a while, I started to feel like maybe me being in the spotlight isn't really a good thing. I was much smaller back then, but a lot of people around me always made sure to let me know I was the biggest one in the group, or, oh, you shouldn't wear that, you shouldn't do that because you're this size. So for a long time, I limited myself, even in what style of clothes I would wear, because I had been constantly told, like, nobody wants to see your body like that. And so once I had gotten to this point of feeling like I'm bold, I'm confident in myself, here comes the disability. Like, here's that comes, like, throwing a monkey wrench into everything that I had worked so hard to do. Like, I had gone to therapy. I had been working on myself for a really long time, and I was finally in this place of peace. We ended up getting pregnant with my son after I had lost my baby a year before, and thinking like, all right, we're in a good space. I gave birth to my son. And during the pregnancy, I started to feel like my hip was bothering me. And they just told me, oh, that comes with pregnancy. It'll go away. But then I began to notice that standing for long periods of time was hurting me. Walking was hurting me. And by God, anybody who knows me knows I walked everywhere. Because when I lived in Philly, I didn't get my license until I was 24. But you ride a train everywhere in Philly. So, you pretty much walk everywhere. I was the type of person who, if I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, I would get up and go take a walk on Boathouse Road, which is along the water. So you can it was relaxing to me.
I bet that was beautiful.
I was always on go. So when it started to creep in that I felt my body was changing and I had no idea what was going on, I became super self-conscious. And simultaneously, as that was happening, the thyroid started acting up, or was already acting up. It just kind of came to a head. So I was dealing with symptoms from that. My hair was falling out. I had locks. I had long locks. I had locks for 8 years.
And you giving us Afrocentric vibes right now. Yes, it's beautiful.
It took a minute to grow it back. Let me tell you, I still got a little.
I'm so glad to see you thrive today. Yes.
Listen, but even during that time, like, I ended up having to cut my locks towards the end of my pregnancy because my hair was falling out. I had no idea what was going on with my body.
And so many women
diagnosed with the thyroid. I thought, okay, I can deal with that. I don't know what I was talking about. Oh my God, that was crazy. But then when they told me what was wrong with my hip was, you have osteoarthritis, I felt like somebody was sucking the air out of the room. The first thing the doctor said to me is, if I didn't see you in person and I had just looked at your x-ray, I would have thought you were an 80-year-old woman. He said the damage was so bad. And he was like, have you ever been told you have something called hip dysplasia? And I said, no. He said, that's a genetic, that's a congenital birth disorder. Like, you were born that way. He was like, honestly, you should have had this treated when you were younger and you wouldn't be here in this position right now. So I was just kind of like, well, what's the diagnosis? Like, what do we do, right? And he's like, oh, you're going to need hip replacement surgeries. And I'm like, all right, sign me up. But then he's like, we can't because you're too big. And in that moment, I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, you're gonna have to lose a lot of weight in order to get hip replacement. He explained all the reasons why. And I just felt like I was getting hit from left and right
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if you know anything about thyroid disease, but when you have hypothyroidism, which is an underactive thyroid, when it's removed,
Mm-hmm.
you permanently become hypothyroid, and it controls your metabolism.
Yes, it does, and it makes you lethargic to the point where
Oh
you're
yeah,
like, can somebody
fatigue,
just do it for me?
everything.
Yes.
So, I'm supposed to be losing weight, which my body was saying, no. And it was also like,
Right.
and you need to like, get all the rest you can get, but that fatigue is beyond, what I was to be able to control. So then I'm fighting with getting medication that worked for me. I'm fighting with trying to lose weight. And in the process of this, my hip is only getting worse. And all of a sudden they're like, you really need a cane.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I'm not getting this cane. I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed because I felt like, ugh, people are going to look at me and they're going to think I'm handicapped because I'm fat.
Mm-hmm.
And so for 9 months, I refused to use a cane. For 9 months, I was supposed to have my paperwork filled out so I can get a handicap placard for my car. And I let the paperwork sit in my glove box. I was sucking it up and was in so much pain going to work,
Mm-hmm.
walking into the building. I stopped going to lunch with my coworkers because just the walk to the elevator was wiping me out. Um, and it took me a really long time. The first time I had to bring my cane to work, I went home early. I was so embarrassed. I cried. I cried and I hated it. And I said, I don't want to be seen as weak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me. I've always been able to defy like the stigmas that have, the stereotypes of being fat. Like this is not what I want. So I struggled with that. And in that process, I decided to write about it. And at first I was really nervous
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know what to expect. But in my mind, all I kept thinking was, you don't really see a lot of people like you with a cane who are willing to put it out there on the internet, right? Not on social media.
Exactly.
And I'm like, all right, you got two options, Alicia. You can either sit back and cry about this, or you're going to suck it up and keep it moving. And I decided to suck it up and keep it moving. And I'll never forget the first moment that I posted a picture with a cane, the outpouring of women who just rolled out like, oh my God, I use a cane too, but I'm so ashamed to take pictures with it. Like I was immediately so in awe, not because I had inspired anybody, but just to know like, oh, I'm not the only one. This is not just me. Like,
Because you told the story, nobody else would.
and there we go. And then the amount of women talking to me about it, I'm like, how come nobody else is talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
And that is when I realized like you really have an opportunity to take something like this and turn it into something positive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that process, we learned that I actually needed something called a rollator. It's a walker, but it has the wheels on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because my hip was so bad that the cane actually makes things worse, right? Because it'll mess up your gait from you putting all of your weight on one side of your body, which will end up doing more damage. So they said, probably do better with a rollator. That way you can be more mobile and you can move around still and walk the way that you want to. So I'm like, I just digested using a cane. Now you're telling me I need my grandmom's walker or a rollator, right?
Maybe.
So I went through another moment of, I don't want to be seen like this. But then it was like either you're going to be in pain like you've been, or you're going to do something to help alleviate the pain. So I did it. And then I showed up at these events with my walker. Even better was I decided going to these events requires a lot of walking, right? And it's hurting me. So I got to thinking, like, everybody uses their power of influence, right, to pitch collaborations with fashion. But what if I pitched a collaboration with Scooter Route? because then I can get the ride that I need to be at these conventions, but I can also not pay for it. So I wrote my first pitch letter to a company that wasn't a fashion company, and I wrote the Scoot Around, and they sponsored me 3 times
Yes.
for different events with a scooter. And that was nerve-wracking because I'm like, I'd never seen anybody at any of these fashion events with a cane, a crutch, a wheelchair, or a walker, or a scooter around. But yeah, like showing up with that scooter, I was terrified, but was also really empowered at the same time. And I met so many people, connected with brands that I was not expecting to connect to. More people reached out. I met another young lady who happened to be vending there, and she had a scooter too. And she stopped me and she said, I was hoping to see you. And she began to tell me how she followed me and had been following the story of what was going on. And she herself dealt with having to get weight loss surgery and dealing with her joint disorder. And in that moment, like, we both cried. And I just gave her a big hug. Of course, this is pre-COVID, you guys.
Yes.
But I really, at that moment, understood the power and representation of all bodies. And while I think the body positive movement, and I've been very open about this, I think has been co-opted and commercialized and hijacked, I think the original intent, which was providing representation in media for marginalized bodies, I understood in that moment why that movement really existed and why it was needed. It was so much less about, oh, if I hunch over, I have rolls, or, I love myself all the time. No, that's not what body positive is about. It's about respecting and honoring any body. It doesn't matter whose body it is, showing it respect.
Regardless of what's going on in it, outside of it. Yes.
There we go. And that lack of representation, understanding that, in my head, I'm like, I'm no longer asking for a seat at the table. I'm just going to create my own table, and anybody's free and welcome to come as long as they're being respectful to one another. And that's really where I started just incorporating my disability into the work that I do, because the God's honest truth is I'm living with this every day. If I don't show you guys photographs of myself in this cane or this scooter it's not real. It's not real. Like, I tell people all the time, the grid is for the pretty pictures, stories is for the raw. And so all throughout the day, if I'm on my stories, y'all are going to get whatever version of me is available. And it's not always being made up or fashionably dressed. Like, sometimes it's me slumming it in a white beater and some sweatpants and some slippers with, a bonnet on. Like,
can we get you to wave your head in the air like a helicopter? North Carolina.
Look, listen, I want to be what I desired to see. On a very surface level, yeah, I could relate to other plus size bloggers, but they were all so refined and so pretty, picture perfect, and I can't relate to that. I just can't. And so that's really, why I've decided to be so open with the disability, because it did impact exactly how my blog began to change in the direction that it was going in. And even coming into the space of running my cosmetics line, the whole idea behind that was I got tired of seeing all of these women, not to have a problem with seeing all these women, but like all these brands would use the same kind of woman, the same looking woman, whether they were Black, white, Puerto Rican, or whatever. They all had a certain look. And I got tired of not seeing women that look like me. You know what I mean? And I also got tired of not wanting to break my pockets to shop for makeup. So I thought, what can I do, that I can be passionate about? Because I ended up loving makeup. Makeup became really therapeutic for me after I fumbled a lot the first time learning. And then it was like, this can get expensive. And I don't want cheap makeup from the Dollar Tree, although I'm not hating on Dollar Tree, but they actually
bring in a little LA colors,
I got some LA colors. Do not play with me. But I want pigmented color too. But I also don't want to have to pay $45 for a palette. I wanted some balance. So I decided to be the balance. I'm like, I'm going to bring you guys the quality of, Morphe and Pat McGrath or, Fenty, but also, give you a fair pricing. So you're not going broke shopping with me. And I even offer Sezzle. I'm like, I'm here for the people. But more importantly, I wanted to be a face in an industry that does not welcome people that look like me.
Yes.
Listen, I tell people all the time, I just want people to learn that you do not have to be the standard of beauty to be beautiful. You don't have to be anybody but you, however you are in your moment. And the thing about the whole body positive and self-love stuff, I tell people all the time, I love myself. That does not mean every waking moment of the day I'm completely 100% satisfied with this. I have moments just like anybody else. The whole love yourself part means I have to love myself enough to work through those moments and do something about it if I want to change it. But see, also learning to give myself grace and show myself mercy, which I had the tendency to not do in the past. And I've also used my blog to talk about those things, because if you get caught up in the commercialism of all this self-love, acceptance, body positive, boo-hoo, boo-hoo, you're not learning anything. You're not learning anything.
No, because you're not really in tune with yourself, first of all, because all of these changes people are unaware of. The next person is dealing with the same type of internal thought. It's like, how do we look at each other as a point of reference to grow? And we have to do that often. How do you think that you are contributing to people knowing what your mission is day to day, aside from just coming on screen as is? What is it that you say to your audience on a regular basis? How are you projecting being yourself or realizing yourself day to day?
So I make it my business to check my DMs, as much as sometimes I hate venturing into the DMs because there's a lot of crazy men out there. I make it my business though to read every message. And if you just like a picture or something like that, I'm not gonna go deep into conversation. But if you write me with real questions and real issues, I'm going to take that time to listen to you, hear you, honor and acknowledge what you're feeling, and often tell people I may not be able to fix it for you, but I can direct you to resources that could be helpful to you. On a day-to-day basis, whenever I'm engaging with anybody, I don't care if you're somebody I run into at the doctor's office or if I run into you in my DMs, you're going to get somebody who genuinely cares. Not just because, you're a follower, you're a fan. Like, I don't believe in any of that. Like, I don't subscribe to any of that. I feel like my platform is what it is because I have people who have decided to support me. So the least that I can do is return that support in a way that you need it, as long as it's within my means to do so. So I always try to make sure that when I'm having conversation with people, like, they feel like they have a safe space to be themselves, to share their feelings, their concerns. But I also like to be an encouragement to people as well, because it's hard out here. Let's be real, it's hard out here for a lot of
They
us.
never lie.
Sometimes all people just need to know is that they're heard, that they're heard and they're understood. We don't even have to agree, but I want you to know I hear you and I understand you and I'm here to encourage you. Like, that's my goal ultimately, is to provide some form of encouragement to people.
So before we take these last few moments to close, I just want to tell all of our viewers that Alicia Young will be back with us to share more topics. I'm so excited to have finally engaged with my girl that I've been following for months on end. The other thing is that I want you guys to be looking out for additions that she's about to bring to APY Blog along with APY Beauty. Can you tell us a little bit about your product?
Sure.
How we can find you, and also maybe any contact information that we can have going forward, and then we're going to close out for tonight.
Sure. So I'm a one-stop shop. So it's AP Young Beauty Collection. If you Google that, or if you put in AP Young Beauty, it will pull up my store. But if you literally go to apyoungblog.com, which is my home site, right at the top, it says Shop AP Young Beauty Collection. So you can just click on it. Currently, I'm closed. I'll be reopening in March. I had to redo some inventory, restock things. End of the year, I wipe myself out, and then I'm like, all right, let me get back on track. So there will be new products coming in March. But
what are your favorite current ones?
So we have eyeshadow palettes. We have highlighter. We have liquid and powder highlighter. We have cream blush. What else do I have going on? Lots of lipstick. This is my lipstick.
Is that your favorite lipstick?
Yes, this is my favorite. we have eyeshadow toppers, and I try to like be more innovative when it comes to my makeup choices. Like I'm trying to bring products that are not traditional, that maybe people aren't necessarily comfortable with, because I want people to be able to explore all their options.
Okay.
So that's what we currently have. And I will be introducing new stuff. So you guys just gotta follow me and keep an eye out. So you can catch me at APY Blog or at APY Beauty LLC. Those are my business pages. Also, I don't want to forget, I just launched a web series with my girl, Namade, from
Yay,
that African Butterfly. It launched last night, was the premiere episode, and we have a show on YouTube called More Than My Size.
Yay.
And we are just giving y'all kind of like a back and forth like this. We're trying to give people another view of fat bodies, that you can be fat, even desire to lose weight, but it doesn't mean you are miserable and crying and just eating 6,000 calorie meals in front of the TV like 600-pound Life likes to say. So we want to show the opposite of that. We want to give people a different view of living life in a plus size body. So check out the YouTube station, More Than My Size, and Instagram is More Than My Size _ the show. And of course, my baby, apyoungblog.com. That is my everything. That is what I've poured my heart, my soul, my energy into. So please make sure you guys go over there, read some articles, subscribe. And I drop a new article every Sunday. If I don't, I will always update on Instagram, let you guys know which article you can run back and go visit, but they're all there. And of course, YouTube, and it's AP Young, where I do mostly makeup reviews and makeup tutorials and clothing try-ons over there. But again, you can find all of that on apyoungblog.com.
Yes. So Alicia is definitely a one-stop shop because she made it possible. We want to thank you so much for coming in on one of our first Realizing You interviews. It's definitely been an honor to recognize you, and I plan on continuing to recognize you for many moons to come.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're actually going to probably get back with you about how you can effectively influence along with blog. And I think that's going to be a good topic for us to land on with you next. So if there's not anything else, I want all of our viewers to know that Alicia's information will be down in our comments. And if you would, just please continue to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button, and follow Alicia Young at all of her handles for apyblog.com. Thank you, my love. Sending you loving vibes, big hugs, virtual hugs, pandemic hugs.
Pandemic hugs.
Go with the flow with this. Go with the flow with this. Go with the flow with this. Don't you worry, two leaves won't grow the same, and people might forget your name. Doesn't matter if they do.